Hey, what is going on YouTube? This is Broke Watch Fanatic here with another video. Today we are checking out this Hamilton Intra-Matic Chronograph. Now if you've been following my channel, you'll notice that this is my first chronograph that I'm reviewing, and that's because chronographs don't really interest me. I tend to find their subdials hard to read. It clutters the dial, legibility gets reduced, and since I'm so used to the second hand ticking away on non-chronographs, every time I look at a chronograph, I forget the seconds are in one of the subdials. So seeing the chronograph hand makes me think that the watch isn't working. Not to mention that it blocks the logo that's usually printed at the top center. But having said all that, my good friend J Truth, who's really into chronographs, was kind enough to lend me his Hamilton for review. Who knows, maybe this watch, after wearing it for some time, will make me gain more interest in chronographs in general. Although I must say that the Moon watch has slowly been growing on me. So if I were to pull the trigger on one, it would definitely be the new Speedmaster Professional. Anyways, thanks again to J Truth. I'll put a link to his channel, so if you like chronographs, I suggest you check him out. He's also got some cool Seiko watches from the Naruto edition, and he's got a bunch of watches lined up for review. So let's start off with the case dimensions measured by my digital caliper. We have a 40mm case size, 14.8mm thick, 49mm lug to lug, and a 20mm lug width. The case is all polished with an underside AR coated sapphire crystal on top and a closed case back on the bottom. It comes with the H51 mechanical movement rated at 60 hours of power reserve, 27 joules, and beating at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It's also water resistant to 100 meters and comes on this stainless steel mesh bracelet with a folding clasp. Now with this being a mechanical watch, not an automatic for those of you just getting into watches, you do have to wind the crown from time to time in order to keep the watch powered. Some people like to do this ritual daily, and it makes them feel more connected to their watch, while others don't really care for it and would rather stick to an automatic where the movement of your wrist would power the watch throughout your day. I personally would prefer the automatic version of this chrono by Hamilton, simply because I don't want to be bothered having to sit there and wind the watch, but that's just my preference. So here are some of my positives. Looking at this reverse panda dial, it's a really good looking watch. The proportions are friendly to a majority of wrists out there. The hands and indices are nicely polished, with the indices being angled down the center so as to have two sides of reflection. The subdials have a cream tone to them, which I think they were going for that faux patina look, and I'm glad they went with 2 subdials instead of 3. I think adding a third subdial would make the dial too busy, especially when it's a different color than the main dial. Now, after handling this watch for some time, I began doing some research and I found that this was a vintage inspired watch from the original chronographs that Hamilton released back in 1968 with their models A and B. Model A being the white dial with black subdials, otherwise known as the Panda, and the B being the black dial with white subdials, otherwise known as the reverse Panda. So if you like that piece of history, it just makes owning this watch that much more pleasurable. Going back to what I said about chronographs losing some legibility, I think the design choices they made here really maximized the readability of the watch. First off, you have skinny hands, which don't get in the way too much when it's in front of the subdials, unlike the Black Bay Chronos with their snowflake hands. And then you have hands on the subdials that have a nice contrast to them. I've seen chronos that have silver hands on black subdials, and that just makes it hard to read, especially in low light conditions. The mesh bracelet that comes with the watch is very comfortable. This is my first mesh bracelet, and although I always prefer integrated end links, the aesthetics of the entire watch really works. It might have something to do with the sharp angles on the lugs that tie in well with the bracelet. It hasn't pulled a single hair from my wrist, which was one of my concerns when I see a bracelet of this type. And the push button deploying clasp is straightforward and easy to use. Plus, you're guaranteed a great fit because this bracelet allows you to adjust the clasp anywhere along the bracelet. Now onto some of my negatives. So one thing that stood out to me was the thickness of this watch. At 14.8 millimeters thick, this is probably the thickest watch I've worn on wrist. But the good thing is you don't notice it when you're going about your day. It's only when you look at it directly from the side that you notice it's a thick watch. I haven't worn a button-down shirt in a really long time, but I would imagine that it would get caught over your sleeve by accident every now and then. One other thing I want to mention is the tachymeter. If you're one of those rare species that actually use the tachymeter, I have to warn you, it's not easy to read the numbers on the edges when you're looking at your watch head on. The edges of the sapphire crystal give off a slight distortion, so the numbers appear really small. You would have to angle the watch just enough to get it into that sweet spot where the numbers can be read clearly. One last negative for me to end this video is if you have small wrists, get ready for some added thickness on the bracelet side due to the overlap, including the clasp as you can see here. It's not a big deal for my 6.5-inch wrist, but I thought I should let you know and see how it looks. Anyways, I do see the appeal of this watch and I can see why this watch is popular. It looks really cool, especially on the wrist, and I hope this video helps you further in making a decision on whether or not this watch is right for you. For me, I think I'll save up more for the Speedy. Until next time, take care everyone.